Welcome back to A Wild Approach. My husband and I recently went on a trip to the Red River Gorge, which is about 3 hours away from where we live, and it's in Kentucky, the state right above us. And it was one of my favorite trips we've ever taken. And I just wanted to share it with you guys. Here we go. The first trail we took when we got there was the Rockbridge recreation area. And it's a loop, and this was probably one of the more easy hikes that we took while we were at the gorge. And as you can see, it's just beautiful here. There were lots of areas on multiple trails that had steps, and that was really interesting too. There were rock steps in some trails, and there were wooden steps in other trails. And most of these trails were full of lots of evergreens. Of course, there's a lot of deciduous things too, but since the leaves have fallen, you mostly notice the evergreens. And it just is that much more beautiful because there are so many evergreens, there's so much to look at. There are a lot of rhododendrons, like in this footage here, but there's also hemlocks, mountain laurels, pines, and I think a lot of Christmas fern. I also noticed American hollies, which you'll see later on in the footage.
Here, another pass if you want.
Wow.
It's like there's like caves that talk.
I know.
Sometimes.
I don't know.
Because it looks like it probably runs through here.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of wet down here.
The rock formations and all the little lines and the holes in the rock, all of that was just so intriguing, and it was so nice to see that. This is what I want our backyard to look like. Ferns, rhododendrons. Well, a small version of this, like ferns, rhododendrons, pines, you know. We already have the pines started. Rhododendron died.
Yeah.
It's a pretty color combo. Oh, wow. Look at that. think it is. And look at the moss. Oh, is that poison ivy? No.
Are you sure?
No, it's not.
Oh, is it because it's serrated?
Yeah, well,
It's right here too.
it's very serrated. Oh, that has 5 leaflets though.
Oh.
I don't know what that is.
It might be.
It might be blackberry. Looks a little different than
It
the
does have
blackberry.
thorns.
Oh, yeah.
I
Poison
think.
ivy doesn't have thorns.
Oh wait.
So that's
yeah,
blackberry.
it does have a little bit of thorns, yeah.
That's probably. Wow. That's so beautiful. Oh.
Can't take these dogs or you nowhere. They had like a hard sand. It's like that creek up there.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, there's some more over there too.
Looks like a skull face. Okay.
Probably go down there and swing and get. No, not really.
but then like the second I did, I touched the water.
Oh wow, those ferns are growing way up on that tree.
Oh yeah. Wow,
Is that a dead tree or a live tree?
I don't think it's dead. That's cool. I've
Yeah.
never seen that before.
And me either.
Dad. Come help Finley. Come help Finley. Oh, look, it has that little...
Yeah.
The next stop on our journey was the Natural Bridge. The Natural Bridge is probably one of the more well-known areas of the Red River Gorge. And I will tell you this, this was an intense hike for me. It's actually labeled as an easy hike, but for me, it was intense. It's just intense compared to what I'm used to. I think a lot of the trails near my house are fairly flat. I mean, there's hills, but they are more gradual. And a lot of the trails in the gorge are far from gradual. But this was worth it. It was beautiful all the way up to the Natural Bridge. We actually took that trail. I think it's called number 1 on the map. And we also took what I think was called number 8 on the map, which was, I think it was Lakeside Trail. So we combined both of these because of where we parked. So there was a point when we went across a footbridge, like a one of those bridges that kind of swings a little bit, kind of moves a little bit, which is a little bit unnerving, right above the water. But it was also kind of cool. I didn't get footage of that though because I was just so focused on crossing the bridge. The next place that we hung out at was a furnace. It was this huge furnace. This was kind of an impulsive trip, like an impulsive visit. We didn't really have plans to visit this furnace place, But it was really interesting, and I'm glad we visited it. This furnace is kind of away from the other landmarks, so to speak, so it's kind of off to itself, but it's massive. And pictures and video just don't do it justice. It's huge. There just so happened to be a man that was there when we got there. He was the only other person there when we got there, and he told us the backstory of this place. And the next set of trails that we took is probably definitely the most intense hike I've ever been on in my life, and also my favorite hike I've ever been on in my life. And it is a combination of rough trail and pinch 'em tight. At first I thought that one of the trails was called Gray's Arch Trail, and it sort of is, but I think it's technically also rough trail, so I'm just gonna call it Pinch 'em Tight, Rough Trail, and Gray's Arch Trail, just because that's what I was calling it before. And we did this in a loop to get back to our car, and it was a very long hike, very intense. You have to have water on this hike. You have to be aware of what you can handle. It was definitely hard on the knees, similar to the natural bridge was hard on my knees coming down the mountain, but this one was hard on the knees off and on, so it was a little bit like off and on, so that I would have a break from my knees being in pain. And I haven't really had a lot of knee pain hiking before until this trip, so I think a big part of it is that I'm not used to these kinds of trails and these kinds of elevation changes, these quick changes in these very steep walking trails. So I think you just need to keep that in mind if you have bad knees, or if you can't go for very long. Shorten your hike by only doing partial trails, or the smaller trails, the shorter trails, and maybe don't combine the trails like we did in this one.
There's a mushroom growing inside of it too.
Yeah, inside of it.
Yeah, inside of it. Right there's one split in half down there too.
But basically how this worked is we started at Pinch 'em Tight from the parking lot, and we walked that trail. We ended up at like a cliffside. It was really beautiful. There were great views. And once we started to get to an area where there were multiple areas to turn, and there was a sign, we were like, oh shoot, where do we go? So the sign kind of gave us, a direction, gave us an arrow, but we were kind of still unsure, so we looked at a map. And we decided to go onto Rough Trail. So from Pinch 'em Tight, at that section where you have basically a fork in the road, we chose to go toward Gray's Arch using Rough Trail. Now, Rough Trail is a very appropriate name. This is the more intense part of the trail. And since it is a pretty long walk, and a lot of terrain change, and a lot of just interesting environment change. Like, you go from more mountainous areas and cliff areas down to streams, down kind of in like more of a bottomland kind of situation. I think you cross a stream multiple times. If I recall correctly, there's little tiny wooden bridges. Sometimes you have to cross the stream with just the rocks that are in the stream. So if it is I don't know, if the water ever gets too high, it could be a little bit difficult to cross, but we were lucky. We were able to cross over the rocks just fine. But This trail, somewhere in this trail, is where you start to wonder if you're ever going to get to Gray's Arch and if you're ever going to get back to your car, if you're anything like me, and you get a little bit of anxiety. And I know I make it sound scary, but it was my favorite part of the whole trip. I know that sounds weird, but there was just something about the adventure of it, the fact that we felt like we were the only people on the planet, because this was a trail where you rarely saw another human being. You almost never saw another human being. I actually don't think we saw another human being on this section of trail, this section of rough trail between the two X's on the map that I showed you earlier. Those two yellow X's kind of mark what supposedly is like kind of danger zones on the trail, and between those two X's is a huge chunk of rough trail, and we took that whole piece, and we didn't see any human beings on that entire section. So that was interesting, and it was definitely a more challenging part of the trail, but it was worth it. It's beautiful. There's so many different kinds of environments. Like I said, you've got everything from a more open woodland, and when I say open, I mean like it's thick woods, lots of leaves, but not a lot of shrubs underneath. You know what I mean? So you can see pretty far, but then you enter these other areas that are full of shrubs, and you can't see but like a few feet in front of you, right? And so there's this huge difference in all these places you're seeing, all on the same trail, all on the same loop. So that was the most interesting part. Now, then we came to Gray's Arch Trail, and we actually took a wrong turn. Not really a wrong turn. We still ended up at our car, which is where we wanted to go, but we ended up missing going under the arch somehow. We almost went toward it, but then we thought it was the wrong direction, so we went around. We thought that if we went around, we would go over the arch, but it ended up not taking us over the arch, and it took us completely away from the arch. So next time, I'd like to go under the arch. So when it comes to Gray's Arch, it was the only one where we didn't actually go under it or over it. We just went around it. So keep that in mind if you take this path in this way. It might confuse you especially when you've been hiking for so long, because this total loop took us 4 hours to do. And because it's bear country, we kept our food in our trunk of our car inside of a cooler. There are certain regulations you're supposed to do when it comes to food storage, and you're not supposed to have your food out unless you're actively eating it. Unless you are camping and you are hanging your food up, and you're not also not supposed to have it right near your camp. You're supposed to have it a certain amount away and hung up in a tree a certain way, and there's all these specifications to keep bears from being attracted to you, so super important to heed those concerns. And because of that, we did not take any snacks on the trail. We took water only. So this was 2 canteens of water. My husband's huge canteen, which I forget how much it holds, but it holds a lot of water. And then my smaller canteen, which also holds a decent amount of water. If you're going to take that 4-hour walk, you're going to be very, very hungry at the end of that 4-hour walk. So even though you don't want to have food on your person necessarily, you want to have food in your trunk, in your car, secured. So Hidden Arch was also a great hike. Hidden Arch is absolutely gorgeous. It sort of reminded me of the Gray's Arch Rough Trail Pincham Tight scenario, but on a much smaller scale, like a miniature version of it, an easier version of it. But ironically, I fell on this hike, and I fell really close to the car. So it was kind of embarrassing because it was probably one of the easier parts of the hike, and it was really close to the beginning of us walking on this trail, and I fell, and it was because of like tree roots and rocks. So just keep in mind, you can fall anywhere on any of these trails, and if you're in the more cliff areas, that's very, very, very dangerous. I was lucky that I fell on a very flat area that I did not expect to fall in. You know, it's funny how that works. Sometimes you end up being more likely to fall on the areas that you think are easy and you think are, oh, it's so close to the car and it's so easy and it's so early in the process. I probably won't fall yet. You know, I'm going to keep walking faster. That's probably when you're actually more likely to fall because you're too confident. You're overconfident. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of tree roots that are just very, very high off the ground in this trail, and there's a lot of rocks on this trail. And that's true of most of the trails, but there were just a lot of bumpy areas, and it was just very easy to trip. On the way home, we really wanted to check out Little Egypt. Little Egypt is also called Triple Falls, I think, and we just call it Little Egypt because we saw that on Google Maps. And Little Egypt is cool because it has multiple waterfalls, and it has a stream, and it has an overlook. Now, we did not go up to the overlook because this is the end of our trip. We were on our way home, and we were just too tired to go all the way to the overlook. So instead, we focused our energy on the waterfalls and the clear water itself, the icicles, and the cliff sides near the waterfalls. There was sparkling water, there were sparkling icicles. It was beautiful. The sound of the water was amazing. It was just an amazing, beautiful hike. But it's a little bit dangerous. Lots of rocks and lots of tree roots. Similar to what I just spoke about earlier when I talked about Hidden Arch. Except, Little Egypt is also dangerous in the fact that there are some areas where you step up, like steps. I think they use logs and rocks to create kind of a staircase type situation, if you will, and it's very dangerous. Some of these steps are extremely steep and deep. So, you know, if you walk on steps, you know, it's a little bit easier to walk on steps that are shorter, but as soon as they get deep and steep, it gets more difficult. You need to be extremely careful on this trail. You need to have extreme caution because there are areas where you could fall into the stream, you could hit your head on a rock, you could fall into the waterfalls. There are little miniature cliffs everywhere. And the thing that makes them so dangerous is there's not as much, there aren't as many trees of substantial size or shrubs of substantial size on the edge of these little miniature cliffs. And so it'd be so much easier to just fall right in the water, fall right into the rocks, and it would be really, really dangerous and really bad. So you really have to watch yourself. There were areas where I wish there was railings, especially on these little cliffs. And so, you know, I just think that they should add a few railings here and there. And sorry if you hear that noise. My cat is trying to get in here where I'm recording audio. I actually came in here because he was being loud out there, and I came in here to get away from the loud noises he was making, and now he's deciding to make them at the door. So there we are. But anyway, so Little Egypt was beautiful, but next time we want to go up to the overlook because we did not go all the way up to the overlook. And the overlook, the pictures online are amazing, and so I definitely want to go there next time. We just didn't have the energy that day. And I think this place is called Little Egypt because the cliff/mountain looks like, sort of like a more natural looking pyramid, or like a rough little pyramid shape. So when you get to the overlook, there's these rocks there and everything, and it's just really, really beautiful. But of course we didn't go up there, and I cannot wait to do that one day. that's the last thing we did before we headed home, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was inspiring. I love to go places like this because it gives me inspiration on what I want to do in my own little patch of earth and in my own little garden and things I want to add to my garden to make it better. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys! Stickers, paintings, and collector boxes. Available now at macylou.com. Thanks for supporting the channel and the wildlife habitat we create. To support the channel, like the video, comment, and subscribe. You can also support my work by buying art from me at macylou.com. Thanks for watching!